By this point in our deep dive into the divorce industrial complex, it's clear that the divorce industry is not just about paperwork, profiting, or getting politicians elected. It's about power. Once the state, the legal system, and the cultural narratives align around that power, the damage doesn't stop at custody orders or court fees. It seeps into the collective mindset, rewriting how people view commitment, masculinity, and even their own self-worth. To that end, part 6 here concludes this deep dive by bringing it all together, exposing how the cultural and psychological ripple effects of this system shape the next generation's understanding of love and loss. The cultural and psychological fallout of the divorce industry extends far beyond the immediate financial and legal battles. What begins in a courtroom or a therapist's office spills into how entire generations think about love, marriage, family, and even their own identity. Divorce has shifted from being a private misfortune to a normalized, sometimes even celebrated, hell, I'd say even often celebrated, life transition. This normalization is not accidental, believe me, and hopefully if you've gotten this far in this dive, you'll understand exactly why. It's reinforced by the profitability of the system and the narratives promoted around it. One of the clearest cultural shifts is the way that divorce is framed differently for men and women. Data show that women initiate nearly 70% of divorces in the United States. That's a figure that remains consistent across education levels and length of marriages. And it's also a percentage that has not changed for a couple of generations. This reflects both changing gender expectations and cultural narratives that increasingly equate divorce with liberation, as I've mentioned. Women who leave are encouraged to see themselves as empowered, as I've mentioned, having chosen themselves or outgrowing their partners. Meanwhile, men are more likely to be cast as the source of the problem, or at best as collateral damage in someone else's empowerment journey, partly because men are less likely to seek therapy or social support, and partly because the cultural narratives around masculinity discourage vulnerability. And if you haven't seen my deep dive into the therapy business, go back and check on that for a little more context. In 2024, a researcher named Rosen noted that when men do seek therapy after divorce, they're more likely to report dissatisfaction with the process, often feeling misunderstood or marginalized. Conversely, women, on the other hand, generally experience less severe long-term declines, buffered mostly by stronger social support networks, including cultural validation and the abundance of programs and resources tailored specifically to them. For children, the fallout is even more sobering. Hundreds of studies over decades of research have shown that children of divorce face greater risks of academic struggles, behavioral issues, and difficulty performing stable adult relationships. Even way back in 1991, a meta-analysis by researchers Amato and Keith found consistent negative effects across emotional, social, and academic domains. Nearly a decade later, researchers by the names of Wallerstein, Lewis, and Blackley, they did a 25-year study that added an even longer-term perspective, showing that many adult children of divorce carried lasting mistrust of intimacy, heightened fear of relationship failure, and more transactional views of commitment. While it is true that many children adapt and thrive despite parental separation, the systemic consequences are difficult to ignore. Divorce is not just about an ending of a marriage. It reshapes the developmental environment of the next generation. Culturally, the commercialization of divorce has reframed how people think about marriage itself. If divorce is presented as a purchasable, even empowering service, then marriage becomes provisional, a condition agreement that lasts only as long as both partners feel it serves their personal fulfillment. In 2014, researchers Carbone and Kahn described this shift as the marketization of family life, wherein relationships are evaluated and dissolved through the logic of consumer choice. Just as people change jobs or switch providers, marriage too becomes subject to cost-benefit analysis. This transactional mindset undermines resilience, patience, and long-term commitment because the cultural narrative provides an easy out. If you're unhappy, the solution is not to work through your hardship, but to leave, and the industry is willing to support and profit from that decision. This cultural reframing also feeds back into gender roles and expectations. Women are encouraged to pursue marriage as a step in their self-development, but also to exit it when it no longer serves them. The state, therapists, coaches, authors, and now even millions of TikTok women and Instagram women provide a soft landing by reinforcing the idea that leaving was the brave and best choice. However, men are disincentivized from investing fully in family, knowing that the risks of divorce, including financial devastation, loss of custody, stigma, and even a lack of cultural support, fall disproportionately on them. The message for men, the way that they receive it, is extremely clear. Marriage is both high risk and low reward in a system in which their role is easily replaced. And hell, if it's not replaced by another guy, it's replaced by the state. The fallout also extends into wider social patterns. Rising divorce rates have been linked to increased rates of single-parent households, particularly mother-headed families, which carry higher risks of poverty, instability, and behavioral issues among children. This, in turn, feeds back into the political and social debates about fatherlessness, gender inequality, and intergenerational cycles of instability. Yet the dominant culture narrative often sidesteps these structural consequences, preferring instead to frame divorce as a matter of personal empowerment rather than systemic disruption. Even popular media reflects and amplifies these narratives. Television, film, the self-help culture rarely portray men positively in the context of divorce. Instead, the empowered divorcee is a recurring trope, while the divorced father is either absent, inept, or villainized. This imbalance reinforces stereotypes and conditions society to expect men to fade out of the picture, while women are celebrated for starting fresh. Mandarini, who I mentioned earlier in this dive, argued that this cultural scripting of fathers being absent is one of the most under-acknowledged consequences of the divorce economy, shaping not only family structures, but also cultural attitudes toward masculinity itself. When all of these dynamics are viewed together, the picture is crystal clear. Divorce is not just an unfortunate event. It's part of a cultural system that profits from breakdowns, reshapes gender roles, destabilizes children, and normalizes impermanence in relationships. As best as I can tell, researchers Nakanesny and Scholl in 2012 were the first to describe all of this as the divorce industrial complex, wherein the financial, cultural, and psychological incentives all converge to make divorce not only common, but expected. The long-term cost is measured in more than money. It's found in eroded trust, fragmented families, and a society increasingly unsure of what commitment even means. In the end, the divorce industry's greatest victory is not in the courtroom. It's in convincing people that breaking families apart is progress. It's like the devil's best trick was convincing the world that he does not even exist. When profit and ideology merge, men become disposable, women are told that destruction is empowerment, and children grow up thinking that instability is normal and to be expected. But awareness breaks that cycle. By naming the machine, by calling it out, and understanding how it works, men can stop being raw material in someone else's system and start rebuilding something that the industry cannot monetize. A stable, self-defined life that's built on truth instead of profit. And as I close out this entire deep dive, I would ask, if you know somebody who could use this information, please do share it with them. I don't often ask my viewers to do that. I think that they're smart enough and intuitive enough to share most often when they like a video and think that somebody else might appreciate it. But if you know a guy who's going through some challenges right now and he could use a message like this, please do share it with him. He'll thank you for it.